We are live.
Okay, thank you. Great. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, January
29th, maybe 28th.
28th. Ooh, not lose a day. On the 28th. And we are here in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. And today is Wednesday, so therefore it's a day we're addressing economic development. And we're going to begin with a proposal that we actually considered briefly last year, but all of us need refreshers, and it may be, and if something we would like to include in our economic development bill. And so with us to introduce it is Senator Wendy Harrison, and we welcome her from Transportation, where she's taking a wee break to introduce this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to be here. For the record, Wendy Harrison, and I am one of the senators for the Wyndham District, which is southeast corner of the state. And happy to be here. You did see this bill last year briefly. It's S88, and it is proposing to provide an additional incentive to the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive Program, known as VEGI. And there are currently two incentives. This one would be similar to what we call green VEGI, the clean energy incentive. And this is an incentive for co-ops. And one of the challenges of when we were getting this bill together is defining co-ops, because there are a lot of different forms, as many of you know. And we wanted to go with the widest net, basically. And the reason that I wanted to propose this, I want to propose this, I propose this, is because I think it's beneficial for multiple reasons for the state to support employee-owned and cooperative businesses. Generally, they are employers who pay higher wages. They typically have good benefits. They're rooted in the community. And something that I think is really important that is the investment of the state in co-ops and similar organizations stays in the state, or at least is much more likely to stay in the state, because rarely it's very difficult to acquire a co-op if they don't want to be acquired, and that's not their business model. So they generally stay in the state, the resources and the individuals. So
it's a solid investment that's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly. And so one of the entities that I think it would be helpful for you to speak with is Chroma, because they have received a VEGI grant. They were not a cooperative when they received the grant. So I think they would have an interesting perspective. And they're not a co-op, they're employee an ESOP.
So what if you be kind of, and maybe just a question, the difference between a co-op and an ESOP?
ESOPs are more employee owned, and they have to do with the retirement funding. So please let the attorney tell you, so that you don't need to get two different explanations.
Right.
But they should be included in co-op, because they have many of the same benefits as co-ops. Someone else to talk to is Matt Kropp from Vermont Employee Ownership Center, and someone who I think you really ought to talk to, because I was not aware of these kinds of co-ops, is Michael Knapp. He's retired now, but he started Green River, and that's a technology company that's a co-op, and it's mission driven. Typically their rates are much less than the private sector or the traditional model. And they're in Vermont. They're a Vermont company that works for other states, and he can tell you a lot. And I think just generally for economic development, even if you don't want to pursue this incentive, I think it's good for this committee to know that there are entities like that out there.
and currently veggies available to them.
Oh,
You're
sure,
just wanting to add an additional.
sure, sure. And you probably want to talk a little bit about veggie and just how, my opinion on veggie, is what I like about it.
Why don't you
It's
tell
what-
everybody that you're on the board?
Yes, I'm on the Pepsi board. I represent the Senate on that board, and there's one representative from the Senate and one from the House. And veggie is not an easy thing to do from the standpoint of the recipient. It's challenging, but it's also it's very protective of state dollars, because the dollars to the company are not given to the company until the company has shown and tax has confirmed that they have had additional revenues because of veggie, and those additional revenues have come to the state. So it's not speculative. With many states just will, start a check to a company and say, just please be here for 5 years. And the company will say, great, thanks for the money. After 5 years, see ya. And this is not the case. Vermont requires that the benefit be, it has to happen before the veg is paid. And that's what makes it a challenge, but it also makes it better for Vermonters, because we're protecting their money.
For that time, up until I think it's 2006, as I remember, in which we gave the money out based on the Pepsi grant, and we lost a lot of money because people didn't achieve objectives, and we'd already paid them the money and we couldn't get it back. So we made a major change around 2006, 2007.
Was that one of your auditor reports?
Well, thank you for that.
There have historically been a lot of issues also, but many of them have been cleaned out. More and more stuff has been done in the present program for Bennett. But I remember asking a company president as to why he had not participated in the Pepsi program, because he was growing and his business was growing. His answer was very simple: I won't lie. And that's interesting observation. Some of this has been cleaned up, but people will say, I'm looking at moving my company to Milwaukee, and maybe if I get some money from Pepsi, I won't do it. And people would in effect fabricate what they were going to do. And that has always been an issue looking at the Pepsi review process is the process sufficiently rigorous to identify situations like that, and people claim potential benefit to the state that is really non-existent because they want the money and had no intention of it in the first place.
Okay, so if we continue to take this up and maybe consider putting it into our bill that already addresses the veggie sunset.
Just existence. Right?
Yeah, we could, well, it would certainly be germane in our economic bill. Thank you. We're going to switch to Rick and go through and answer some of the questions we have. Thank you very much. And good luck in transportation. Work on that transportation gap. We're working on the housing gap.
Good. Thanks.
Rick.
Good morning.
Well, it's good to have you.
It's good to be back in this committee. I've not been here yet this session.
Well, we got you all morning.
You do, like it or not. Rick Sable, Office of Legislative Counsel, S88, Senator Harrison, gave a good overview. Happy to answer questions or maybe start with a walkthrough, Madam Chair. How would you like to?
I think particularly for new members, we haven't really discussed a veggie incentive growth in this committee. We might just talk about I think the questions that came up in Wendy's testimony were differences between co-ops and employee-owned businesses.
Right, and
what incentives exist at the moment, and
so as far as the legal definitions, I would need to come back to the committee and give you all. I don't feel comfortable giving you exact definition because I
So we
don't have
don't
them.
find them in this.
They're cross-referenced. So for example, on page 4 of the bill, we reference, because it is a federal designation, the
A co-op or
the employee stock owner, ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. Subdivision A1 is a cross-reference. So it is a federal
Yeah.
designation. Vermont, I assume, does have some companies that offer this, but like I said, I think if you would like maybe I could create some kind of spreadsheet that kind of goes over those differences because I'm not prepared to get
okay.
into that detail today. Just
And so do we talk about co-ops here?
so
Amanda uses that first before she uses ESOP.
So if you look, I'm on page 4 again.
Yeah.
Subsection A. We loop in quite a number of these quote unquote cooperative businesses, trying to kind of catch as many as you can in this definition. So employee-owned business means these ESOP businesses that offer these plans to their employees.
Right.
It also includes a worker cooperative, subdivision 2. Which is either the federal definition or the Vermont definition of a worker cooperative, or subdivision C, an organization that is not legally defined as one of those two, but employees of the organization constitute a majority of its membership. Bottom of page 4, members of the organization hold a majority of the voting power. Members of the organization have the authority to elect a majority of the board of directors on the basis of one person, one vote, and the organization allocates a majority of its allocated earnings and losses to members on the basis of patronage, capital contributions, accommodations of 1 and 2. And they seek an incentive, which is kind of ensuring that they are applying to being a veggie program. So that we're trying to pitch as many of these member-owned companies as we can. But like I said, I can certainly provide more detail about what this means.
Which would be, I think it would be great. And we'll, I think, obviously have representatives, everybody from Jessica, Hartleben, who runs the veggie program, to other people that people around the table would like to have included, and the 3 that Wendy mentioned. What would you just quickly review for us the incentives veggie currently offers?
So there's the kind of underlying veggie incentive where a business, any business in Vermont, doesn't have to be a qualified market or a green veggie. I'll talk about that in a second. Any business can apply for a veggie grant of money. There's an application process. They go through Vepsi. Vepsi reviews the application. And if I can, I'm going to share my screen. Right. Kiara, if I can have that access. Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to show you the statute, which walks you through exactly.
The 2 incentives we currently have, which are
Yeah, but we'll start with this first of all. So we provide Vepsi with the application approval criteria. Vepsi makes the final decision about whether or not to approve an application, but there are certain things that it must meet in order for Vepsi to approve the application. Just going to skip around here a little bit. So this is under 333 IN in Title 32, Section 3332. So for each award year, the business applies for an incentive. The business shall specify a payroll performance requirement, specify a jobs performance requirement, or a capital investment performance requirement, or both, and provide other information as the council requires. So here are the mandatory criteria. This is what they must consider. Except for an enhanced incentive for a qualifying market, the new revenue the proposed activity would generate to the state would exceed the cost of the activity to the state. So this kind of shows you the way that they fund these is through a tax consideration, that if your revenue is going to be more than the cost to the state deems that to be an incentive worth approving. 2, the host municipality welcomes new business. 3, pursuant to self-certification or the documentation the council requires by rule or procedure. The business attests to the best of its knowledge that it's not named in an admin order, consent decree, judicial order. The business complies with applicable state laws and rules. The proposed economic activity would conform to the applicable town and regional plans and with applicable state laws and rules. If the business proposes to expand within a limited local market, the incentive would not give the business an unfair competitive advantage over other Vermont businesses in the same or similar line of business. And then maybe most importantly, the but-for test, subdivision 5. But for the incentive, the proposed economic activity, A, would not occur or would occur in a significantly different manner that is significantly less desirable to the state. To me, I will speak for Pepsi, that gives Pepsi the biggest kind of decision-making authority that they can determine that this is not going to do the but-for test. So that's currently how you apply for an incentive. And section 333 is how you calculate the incentive.
Right.
I'm not an economist.
No, so
Yeah.
so two enhanced incentives we have
Yes.
are
Number one is the qualified labor
qualified labor market.
area. Yeah.
Area market.
Which is actually in most parts of the state. If you look at the actual determination here. So the council may increase the value of an incentive to business in a labor market in which the average annual unemployment rate is greater than the average annual unemployment rate for the state, or the average annual wage is less than the average annual wage for the state. So a year ago, when I looked this up, Chittenden County, sorry.
I think
I
Chittenden's the only one that doesn't.
That's my last, but that was a year ago.
So every one of our other jurisdictions would qualify as a
I
qualified.
would double
labor.
check that, yes.
And then the second enhanced incentive.
It's not all about Chittenden County, just for.
No, but you know what, we're thrilled that you don't need it.
Yeah.
And then the second enhanced incentive is for.
Is green veggie, that's the colloquial term, environmental technology business. So this is a business that is subject to income taxation in Vermont. I assume that is to ensure they actually are here in the state physically.
Right.
And seeks an incentive for economic activity that ACDB certifies. It's primarily research, design, engineering, development, or manufacturing related to one or more of the following. And you have a list of things here: waste management, natural resource protection, including water, wastewater purification, treatment, air pollution control, soil, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what the worker cooperative member-owned incentive is based on, this environmental technology. Right? It's almost the exact same language. And my understanding is that last year during the walkthrough, Pepsi wasn't sure that calculation was going to work, so we may want them then to provide what calculation they would prefer. Just want to put that out there.
Right.
That's my memory.
So we now get to the Wendy is proposing in her
A
bill
third,
that
yeah.
we add a third
Yep.
enhanced incentive, which is a higher incentive for businesses that are employee-owned, member-owned, and or employee-owned or member-owned clubs.
Right. S88, correct.
Great. And so I have we will need to understand how many of those actually qualify, how many of them are mature enough businesses to actually be able to take advantage of veggie. And so that's what we would be digging into. Any questions for Rick on this bill? I think one of the questions at least in my mind, and maybe in the rest of your mind, is whether we would want to include this in our economic development bill or not. It could just be on its own, or it could be included, given that we have the elimination of the veggie sunset in this bill. So we could consider adding it. I would want to hear from Jessica to understand who's taking advantage of what at the moment anyway, and how many more businesses this would actually affect. I think Wendy's point is a well taken one, which is employee-owned businesses do tend to be more firmly anchored in one and they're not going anywhere. Or your supply.
That was serious.
Yeah, no, that was, that was a surprise.
Yeah, and it's a classic story of trying to grow too fast in a burgeoning online market during the pandemic, but it would have been nice to see if we could help them stay employee owned.
And would need to understand if they actually had reach out to do any of these,
Mhm.
who knows? But that is before us as an option, so options are everything, so we have this as an option. So, welcome, Keisha, it's good to you, well, I don't, yeah,
Sorry, I would just say, I think the challenges and Garner Supply could be a good example of this. There's often a transition to employee owned once the company's really well established and it's being transferred from its founders or, it's a really great tool. This just might not be the best incentive because it's not usually when they're going.
right, this,
I
I think,
middle stage.
I would view this incentive as after they've accomplished that and after they're established as an employee owned,
Yeah.
not necessarily for
Well,
as a people.
one of the things that the Pepsi board does in terms of evaluating, as they evaluate the potential life of the company, whether or not it's
Yeah.
likely to be here and continue, and I would think that would be one of the things that they would do as part of their typical due diligence.
Yeah.
I think one thing that would be interesting also, though, to look at is the history of employee ownership of businesses in Vermont and how successful they are. My sense is that the fallout rate is higher than, but I don't know that. for a
Really?
fact.
Oh, God.
I don't know that. for a
We
fact.
used to have the employee ownership
Yeah.
person,
We will have,
anchor person.
that, Matt Crop. We will have Matt
Yeah.
in the next, Michelle Cooperston and then Matt Crop.
Oh, yeah.
You remember when Michelle took that over?
Oh, yeah. She's my mother's neighbor.
Oh, how cool. So more to follow, think about this. And then what I'd love to do is, first discuss our housing bill, and then pivot right into, our economic development committee bill, which is where we're going to collect some of these economic, pieces. So just an update on the housing, which I've tried to talk to each of you. In a meeting yesterday with the pro tem and the chair of Senate Natural Resources, they had reviewed the housing bill, as we have, had it drafted. And there was a request, a strong request. Hi, Linda, welcome. To pull all the, Act 250 pieces. That would mean pulling the design by right design piece that Alex Farrell is supporting, that or has proposed, the extension of our interim exemptions and the opt-in, opt-out. I requested that if we were going to do that, two things that I wanted for this committee. One is I really asked that the chair make sure that, and the chair has voiced a real interest, an objective of having a housing bill this year. So she wants to anchor it in that design by right piece. So I said, great, we welcome you having a housing bill. In addition, I would like you to guarantee that you take up the opt-in, opt-out, and that you take up the exemptions or the interim exemptions. She agreed to do that. And I also asked, the second piece is I asked for them to not take, if we take those pieces out, that we not commit it to SNRE for further review, or for, that they would not own it and that it would not be sent to them, but that they would review it. And she agreed to that. So it is, I have to say with heavy heart that I felt, particularly with the pro tems, ask that we do review the bill that we're currently looking at, but without those three pieces, but with the guarantee that people who would like to testify, we we'll chat with Ann and make sure that we get those. They're definitely gonna be taken up and get you guys in to testify. And that we will strongly support those in her committee. So, anyway, so it's a heavy heart, but, that's sort of where we are. So we will have a clean draft for us to sign off on, hopefully vote on tomorrow at lunchtime. We'll have a draft today for you all to look at, which we'll send around. Thomas.
So on this, it's my 6th year in this position, and I'll say this seems to be the recurring theme. Every year, there's a tension between the jurisdictional authority of natural resources and housing. As I reflect on this role, we define those jurisdictional roles and why we have this housing conservation board, I might contemplate, not for this year, but in years to come, I think we would have better housing and conservation policy if we had the same individuals hearing the same testimony. And I would propose that maybe we need a Senate Natural Resources and Housing Committee rather than energy, so that they are not going to imbalance the discussion or create these unnecessary conflicts, so that we better have approached the topic of housing and land use rather than having these two committees where we put individuals that are passionate on both and then there's this constant tension. That's a discussion for the coming years.
Good discussion.
I do think we need to continue to push on actual housing conflict, and that really lands in the permit form that I think we've neglected to do over the last how many years. So I'm hopeful that Senate Natural Resources truly takes this on, and if any wind I can give you, Chair, at your back to press.
My nails are out there.
It's there.
Well, baby, love.
There's actually a good suggestion in there, or I'm just pull a good suggestion out of there.
Thomas, what Thomas
Yeah.
just said.
We could have a joint hearing. We
Oh,
did that at the beginning of last biennium when we said we are doing the Home Act. And we listened to the same witnesses.
Mhm.
That was a lot on appeals, and, you know, we could do it again. There's new members of both committees. And maybe we could all hear that bill together, so they hear how we think about these things, and we hear how they.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. We have talked about that. And I think in the next week or so, we would be great to do it on appeals in particular, because we're both getting that bill. We will have possession of that bill after it gets voted out of SNRE. So I think particularly on appeals, let's plan on doing that next week.
I think you said something to me that, you know, I hope I'm not playing anybody's hand, but the natural resources is interested in blueprints and a housing toolkit.
Yeah.
That's still very much our
I agree.
jurisdiction. So maybe we just, as they form a bill, we can have like a monthly joint meeting, because I don't know. I feel like that is reaching into what we do well.
Maybe on those three pieces, we could have joint
Yes.
joint hearings. Let me take that up with the pro tem and with the chair. I think it's a good idea, but on appeals, definitely, because we're both hearing this.
Right. Well, and I mean, if you look at my bill in general, tiers, like all of it. So if I know we're keeping some of that stuff,
We're
and our
keeping the road.
permits,
Yes. I know.
if they want to get into housing, we're doing it together. And I support that. Good. They should. It's
So-
about climate resilience.
Yes. Well, and housing and climate resilience. So with that, we will have Patrick, we will have a bill, today. I think it's probably ready, and I will circulate it to all of you to take a peek at, and then I would hope that we could, vote it out as a committee work in progress to go and then get recommitted. So today, we're gonna pivot and look at, we're going to take up our committee economic development bill. And to do that, we have both Pat to update us on what's currently in the governor's budget in terms of economic development. And we're gonna just look at what we pulled together for a starting point. And to do that, we have Rick Stagel ready to go.
Have not left.
And I've asked members of the organizations, the resources that we included last year in our economic development bill, really key resources for our for our businesses in every stage of development. And we're really, as you know, trying to identify stages of development and what resources we offer, what the state and others offer in each stage of development that are substantive resources for those companies. We asked members of those organizations to be here with us on deck to answer questions if we have them as we go through this, because this is a very condensed process. We have been asked to get a committee bill out by Thursday so that that seems stupid to me, but anyway, there we are, we're doing it. To then it gets introduced and then gets sent back to us and we'll be working on it for the next month. There we are.
All right.
So take it away, Rick.
Yes, Rick Sagel with the Office of Legislative Counsel. This is draft 1.2. No bill number yet because it's not been introduced. You have until Thursday to introduce it.
No, to vote it out of committee. And then it'll be introduced on the floor at some point and then sent back. Yes, you're right. And for us to vote on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on page 2, the purpose statement, this is an economic development bill.
Okay, so it's on everybody's desk. It is, and it's online too for the public. It's draft 260759.
That's it.
Draft 1.2.
The purpose statement, just to kind of set the stage here, the act proposes to strengthen and support Vermont's businesses and promote long-term economic growth by investing in the economic development and vitality of its downtowns and village centers, providing key financial support, technical assistance, and incentives for Vermont businesses of all sizes and stages of development. Section 2 amends the downtown and village center taxpayer program. Currently in statute, the cap is $3 million. This bill would up that to $5 million every year.
And just as we go through that, remember in the governor's act, it was reduced to 3. They had been hoping for 5. They can't say that. We can.
Who's to say?
The department.
Any questions about that section, about the downtown village center tax? Section 3 contains a few subsections about small business support. Subsection A, expanding legal services. So this was in S-122 as it passed the Senate last year. It was removed, forget when.
You have it, right?
I do. Oh.
You have it somewhere, right?
On the website, so we're just trying to go on the same page.
Oh, wait.
Literally page.
Yeah, so it will be on the website. It's being posted now. Sorry.
So we have 5.
Yeah, but this is
But the
just for the
governor,
governor.
okay, I
Governor has
just wanted to make a note of that.
The department originally had thought it got, during the budget process, got cut down to 3.
Right. But so it's not, we don't have $2 million.
We may.
Budget.
We have
I'm
not
just-
been
I'm
given
just-
our sandbox yet. I'm asking Andy for our sandbox. All of this is what we want, not necessarily what other people want. So I think that's where we really have to have it begin.
Okay.
Okay.
Back to, I'm alive on page 3.
Mhm.
Section 3, the expanding services for small businesses. The subsection A, as I mentioned, this was in S-122 last year, as it passed out of the Senate. I can't remember if the House took it out or if one of the appropriations committees took it out, but you had a similar ask in
Right.
your economic bill last year.
Right.
It was S-122. So, similar wording, money's appropriated to the Department of Economic Development in 2027. 300,000 shall be allocated for the purpose of supporting the Vermont Law and Graduate School's public education offerings and free legal support to small businesses through its Vermont Small Business Law Center.
Right, and we have Nicole Killeran is maybe on deck. So we've invited the people that we were working with last year who've heard quite a bit of testimony on, and we are going to have again. But I just want to remind people that this was begun under a federal grant. It's turned out to be enormously helpful for businesses as they particularly in early stage, in startups in early stage, figuring out what legal structures they want to form under, what the issues are for them. Linda's been very involved in this. And it is the federal money evaporates, in June of 26, that's this year. And so this is to keep it alive, basically, because otherwise it has no support in the governor's budget, and it has at the moment no federal support. There is hope, but at the moment the federal support is the question mark.
And just to maybe clarify something for everybody, the way this is written is kind of the way appropriation wants it, to where
Mhm.
ACCD, which contains the Department of Economic Development, they would need to request this money. So the 300,000 would need to come from the big bill. And that could be negotiation, and Pat's here, he's nodding, which is usually a good thing. With Pat, when he's nodding at me, it's good. That can be done, but that's the way this is not an appropriation. This is an allocation of appropriated funds.
Okay, so unlike some of the other requests that we're about to go through, there is nothing in the governor's budget.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
But it is a program of high value, and the funding for it evaporates in June of 26.
Does this suggest that that since it is allocated from the governor's request, is it modifying that request, or is there another 300,000 from someplace else that will replace this?
No,
None of the above. None of the above. So
Yeah.
the way this is written, it doesn't really have anything to do with the governor's request. The 300,000 is basically a call to the appropriations committees to say, you need to find this money. You cannot allocate this if it's not been called for. I may not use the right words here, but they would need to find 300,000 in the ACCD budget, either appropriating 300,000 or reallocating money to make that 300,000 work for them.
So this is an introduction then to our appropriations committee.
right. And Andy and I are in conversation about the sandbox that we will have to plan every year. As you know, we're given an amount. And this is again for us to discuss, and we'll take time to discuss it. But this is just to get the discussion, just to anchor discussions. So the second piece,
Business advising. This was also in your bill last year, and there is a governor's recommend as a part of this. I'll explain, or Pat can explain in a second.
yeah,
So of monies appropriated to the Department of Economic Development in 2027, 689,000 shall be allocated for a grant to the Vermont Small Business Development Center for the purpose of supporting the continuation of its work in helping Vermonters start, acquire, and grow businesses. So the governor's recommend is roughly 380.
380 this year, is that right, Pat?
Yes, 389,000. And the bill that you're looking at explains on line 6, this increase of 300,000 from the governor's suggested budget will allow the center to serve an additional 200 Vermont entrepreneurs and business owners through no fee, one-to-one advising to help them start businesses, add, retain jobs, increase sales, export products, and prepare their ownership succession plans to transfer ownership for the business to continue to operate in Vermont.
And we will hear from Linda either now or in the future whether that is still current, but we understand it is. That need is just growing, particularly with the cut in federal money. That represents a cut of federal allocation.
Pat, the federal allocation for that one?
Then we're going to turn to Linda Rossi.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Linda Rossi, State Director for Vermont Small Business Development Center. Thank you for that information. At this time, we are anticipating on the federal side, which comes from the Small Business Administration, level funding from calendar year 2025. We will know shortly, within a few days, possibly. They're considering a slight increase on the federal side, which means we're required to have an appropriate increase on our non-federal match. Bless you.
Which will be figured out as appropriations always
Yes.
does, both with the Arts Council, the Humanities Council, several other entities like this. They
Exactly.
will work that out in appropriation.
So at whatever point it's helpful to the committee, I'm prepared to give an update from
Yeah.
last year on the needs
and some of those critical stages and areas of advising that would have the most impact and return on your investment.
For our moment in time now, though, your ask was, your level funded, it would be 380.
So level, if it was to the base, is
Yeah.
the 388,889 on the state side. Last year, we had one-time funds of 150.
Right. Well,
And
that
so
was
we
the
weren't
one
sure
piece that
until this
survived our
week
bill. Right.
What was the level funding? Was it including that one time or whether it was
Ah.
back to the original base? It seems with the governor's budget, it is referred back to that original base.
Yes. Okay, great. That's helpful for us as we move forward. Okay, and the third piece here?
Yes, the third piece is the micro business support, subset.
Yeah,
Just-
yes.
Are there new strings attached to the federal dollars like we're seeing in other areas about, DEI or like that?
Our mission remains the same, supporting all stages, all Vermonters, all entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Subsection C, micro business support. This is a ECF allocation. 594,000 shall be allocated to the Office of Economic Opportunity for the purpose of supporting VCAP, the Vermont Community Action Partnerships Micro Business and Owner Program. And I'm pretty ssure this is in the governor's recommend. Okay, it is.
It is.
It's
This made it, and we just are gonna need to advocate for it. As we know, this is really our earliest stage investment of time and energy. And we will have the CAP, our Community Action Partnership Program, in to talk about it, but this is, remember, spread out over 5 CAPs, I believe. And so each of them have a micro business office, and this is just like VHIP. This is one of our biggest bangs for the buck. This gets people, and the reason it's anchored in the Department of Children and Families, it is considered a social, what's the right word? A social investment in people who are low income and who have great ideas. And this is how Switchback started. I mean, a lot of very successful companies, and surprisingly, a lot of service-oriented companies that are the backbone of our property management businesses and home services and home care services. This program has really enabled a lot of that natural and organic growth from people who are at a tough spot and are growing their economic ability. Yes, Patrick.
So I don't think I've introduced myself. Patrick Judge, Joint Fiscal Office.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, so the dollar figure you see there is roughly $100,000 more than what is in the
Right.
bill rec.
So we would be asking, that's right, then that
The bill rec is 493,339.
that's right.
I hope a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
is to do it.
Yeah, but
Okay, because I just,
getting it,
I am not following what is existing monies that we're asking that agency to reallocate versus what's in the governor's budget versus if we're putting a different figure than.
this is early days, and we will
Okay.
absolutely have that. Part of it is, we will have that, but particularly after we pick this up, we'll have it right away next week. So, and I would just say, because there are organizations we asked to support last year that are not here now. Partly that is because they are also taken care of in the governor's recommend. And Pat, maybe this is a good moment for you to just say which ones they are.
Sure, I can, so the things I was asked to look at, so there was the professional color, which is in the ACCT, that has a 60,000 base appropriation in it. Micro business, which we were just talking about, is the 493,339, which is also base funding. The Small Business Development Center, which was just talked about, has the 388,889 base funding. It did have an additional 150 in one
Right,
time
which we got
year.
left, yeah.
BOREC, which I think Rick is about to talk to you all about, is in the governor recommend with 500,000 in one-time funding. And then there's that the International Trade Division at ACCD, which
Right.
is in the GovRec with one-time funding of $150,000.
Okay, great. So we're about to go through those sections. So I just wanted to mention that the business advising that Sustainable Jobs Fund proposed last year isn't here. There are a number of other things that aren't here this year, but and certainly up for discussion. But at the
All right.
moment, those are the ones we're moving, starting. Okay,
Section 4 on page 4, line 15. The Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, as Pat said, there is in the governor's recommend 500,000 currently going to VOREC. This is an additional 200,000 that would be allocated to conduct a comprehensive outdoor recreation study that will provide a better understanding of what is and is not working in the $2.1 billion outdoor recreation industry. That money would be needed for that study.
it's an economic impact study, really. It's not just what's, and we'll obviously figure this out, but they've asked for an economic impact study.
And that's not a normal course of business in the 500,000 that we're.
No, and we'll hear about that.
All right, section 5.
Yeah.
This is in the governor's recommend, showing you support of those. Section 5, the International Business Office, 150,000 in 2027 to the International Business Office for the purpose of continuing to support the office initiatives. This is the Montreal office, trade office, that has gotten several one-time appropriations in the last few years to continue operating.
Yeah.
Section 6, the brownfields allocation. Monies appropriated to the Department of Economic Development in 2027, $3 million shall be allocated for brownfields remediation and redevelopment. Not in the governor's recommend.
Very disappointing. I think we allocated for exactly the same amount last year, and we ended up with 2, as I recall.
Not in S122, but maybe in a different bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just, right.
Promise.
Before we hear from the administration and the rationale for fixing this,
We will have them.
Okay.
Matt Chapman is on deck. Not, I think, not the agency's choice, agency of natural resources. I don't think this is their choice.
so then who from the administration could, I just want to know why, what's the rationale?
I'm not sure that they will publicly tell you, but we're gonna have Matt Chapman in to talk about the need.
Besides, of course, $2 million or $3 million bucks.
Yeah, I think
That's why they don't.
in that the conversation, I think we probably have to have offline for us to have a real understanding.
Great. Section 7.
I will just say I was profoundly disappointed to have like nothing in there for that. It's just really sort of surprising. Okay, sorry. So,
No, section 7. So if this looks familiar, it's because a version of this was in the Economic Development Committee bill last year that got eventually stripped out. It's back, and it's changed a little bit. So this would be a task force to address business development in Vermont. So kind of a bit of a background here. Last year, you created the task force to really look more at capital for small businesses, how they can access capital, ways to get either state funding or private funding, venture capital. That in the House became a study, and then it was eventually stripped out totally. So there was no task force or study on this. It is being recreated here in section 7. So the purpose would be to identify how Vermont can better enable and support business growth through every stage of development. The task force shall identify what resources are currently available to small businesses and what additional resources are needed to promote growth. How Vermont can
So-
impact.
yeah, this is really all stages of development. So it's not just for small business. This is really for us to do an inventory of the resources we offer because it is not clear. This came up in the VEPSI. I think I've already said that. This came up in the VEPSI conference when people were talking about small businesses and why they couldn't access veggie.
Was that
Art-
the one I was there?
Yeah, you were there for that. When I stood up and said, we need to do a better job articulating what resources are available for what stage of business development. And that's what this group of people would do, which is really do an inventory of that and look at what do we offer in all stages of business development, and really also continue to explore how can the state effectively partner on access to capital, because it's a modestly off. It's not an obvious answer on that, and every state does it slightly differently. And we have failed to do much of a job on this, and it's one of the things businesses is always calling out for is how can we better access and how can we more effectively access capital and how can we companies.
So I just didn't see the membership, because if it's all people who are supposed to be doing this anyway, I think I just want to make sure that
Well, I mean,
this is
this is
important
subject for
that they
discussion,
get together.
obviously.
yeah.
This is subject for this, but I guess what I wanted to say just in one is it's not just to small businesses, it's for all businesses
Right.
at all stages of
Right.
development.
So for example, like Change the Story, I think did a great job on this topic.
Yeah.
Women make up a third of registered entrepreneurs in the state, but 9% of the access to capital.
Yeah.
There are things some of us know, others don't know,
Exactly.
but like, are we giving them a charge that is clear enough and has the right people at the table to understand what?
But that's,
I mean, it's just a
I
huge
agree.
charge, and maybe we narrow it in some way or something.
I
But
agree,
it's,
but
I have had a huge issue with access to capital for women, new Americans, people of color, and we have pointed this out
Right.
to folks.
but we haven't had a group really focusing on this to come back to us with recommendations. So that is what this is designed to finally, hopefully do. And this is a beginning of the membership composition, may not begin. Dave.
Yes, I can. So I think this kind of nibbles around the edge. I think that at some point, we need to initiate an effort that looks at why Vermont's economy has stagnated for decades, with the exception of Chittenden County. Contribution. And I don't think that focusing on women only or folks of color or small businesses is going to provide the answer we need to make some significant changes in the state's economy to bring us into the 21st century. And I support the task force, but I think it's missing the part. It's an opportunity. If we're going to spend money, bring people together, let's have that bigger conversation.
So let's figure out what additional language we would add and whether this is the group to do it.
Well, I want to see if you have an appetite. That's
How much money is in here?
It's just the cost of running.
But that adds up to what, like?
It's just two legislators. It's two legislators and the help of Ledge Council and JFO.
No, I'm just asking because if I would put Kevin Chu in charge of a committee on economic mobilization and ask him what money he needs to do that and let him pick whoever, that's what I would do.
So we
It's
can look
just
at,
the usual committee that talks and make a
Yeah,
recommendation that they pay no attention to, and we go on to the next.
and
So,
we should hear these folks
I don't
in
think this
committee,
is-
all five of them, not one person.
yeah, absolutely. We started with this group. I want to make sure we have the executive director Hula on it. I mean, there are a ton of other people to have on this. We've just started with, because ACCD oversees this, one would hope that, well, that's for the economic development for this thing.
But to Senator Weeks' point, I definitely I'm proud of the growth that Chittenden County has had. I want that growth throughout the whole state of Vermont. So as much as I love Hula, they are
Yeah.
in Chittenden County. So I would want this initiative to definitely be broadly based and focused on the entire state outside of the growth areas that have already been successful.
Yeah, I think that's a key addition to add to this, which is how can we better expand business development across the state, or however we come up with the Richmond. I think that's a great, that would be a great addition.
All that.
But
It's a call. He said, hello, Rutland. It's a callback to last year.
I'm all about Rutland. It's like, you
It
know,
is.
I would just say the question is, should we all do this work together Should we be hearing this from people when they come in? 'Cause these are all people who talk to
Right.
us anyway. And should we all have the same information tailored to specific recommendations about what we can do? Just
We
do that.
Okay.
Like, I just don't want another task force.
We don't,
And it's probably gonna get stripped out.
I don't think it will be stripped. I hope it won't be stripped out.
Well, we have to pick like one task force that we want.
I would just like to say that as the person who arranges for the agenda for this committee, that on 3 or 4 hours a week, we are not going to be able to address this fully this year, given we have a month and a half before, I mean, not even a month and a half before crossover. So that is why, as we all know, we often delegate some of the work and we can be really prescriptive about it, but we delegate a lot of our work to task forces that do generally good job and come back to recommendations that we either have the political will to do or not do. And I would say that that is our challenge, is we do not have enough hours in our 3 hours a day to address this fully. And that is why I would suggest we put together the task force we want. And I think that would better serve us than, I mean, I think we obviously have to understand the problem right here in this committee, and we have certainly heard a lot of it. So, but I do think to move it forward, I think we need recommendations from a group that's really going to be laser focused on this, and working on it, and then coming back to us with recommendations. And I would absolutely entertain, I think it would be great to have there's some additional language on looking at how we can help every every section of state flourish, and what are the barriers to that. But I do think that, you know, we just don't have the hours in the day to do what I would want.
I just think Lyle Jepson is like an incredible person to just say, what do we need to do? Like, I think
He's one person.
it's going to look different in every part of the county, right? Hula's gonna have something very different to say than Lyle, but I think he's a very good choice for like what we need to do to help places that really need access capital. And then most of the rest of this bill are people telling us we need access to capital and here's what we need and here's how we would distribute it to people who don't have access to capital.
That's one piece of this. And why don't we just finish going through it and then we can see.
Sure.
And Lyle is certainly one person. However, as you will remember, in committee, I asked Lyle what his asks were for economic development this year, and he didn't have any. So I would suggest that we need to be clear on what those asks are for businesses to flourish across the state.
To that point, I would love to hear from areas, which I'm going to pick Rutland again.
Yeah.
From your regional development corporation director and others in that area, in the areas that are admittedly or otherwise concretely evaluated as having less economic growth, what do they want to hear? So I'm not against any of these people on here, but rather than just broadly getting the same characters,
This is not the same character.
Okay,
Just
sorry, I don't know who the character is, but I would love to hear from your area as to what they specifically would like to see us focus on.
and the Northeast Kingdom.
Sure.
And, you know, every area. Why don't we just quickly go through this and then we can, and see who we might add. I think, Kevin is a great addition here, which,
Can I ask one more clarifying question? Are you saying the business owners wouldn't get a per diem?
no, they get compensated as all task force people get compensated. So
So-
we have 3 members. So why don't you go through it, Rick, and then we can.
Sure.
Because the appropriation you said was just for 2 legislators.
Well, it's for everybody who puts in for a per diem or a task force compensation. Most people who are employed don't tend to do that, I've watched other study committees. People who are employed tend to serve as a part of their employment.
I may defer to panelists. It depends on if it's part of their job.
Right, if you're in a startup.
Yeah.
No, and it's $50 a day.
They have the statutory
Exactly.
right to request a per diem. Okay. So the membership, it's a member of the House, appointed by the Speaker, a member of the Senate, appointed by the committee and committees, the Secretary of ACCD or designee, the Executive Director of the Vermont Small Business Development Center or designee, the Executive Director of the Vermont Community Action Partnership or designee, the Executive Director of the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund or designee, the President of the Vermont Regional Development Corporations or designee, 3 members appointed by the Governor, a business owner of a startup, a business owner or manager of a middle stage company, and a business owner or manager of a mature company.
And we have obviously a bunch of suggestions of additional people or people instead of people. But Kevin is obviously the chamber floor designate would be, I very much would like to have, VSET or Kula represented on this group too, because they represent a whole range of businesses. Patient.
Is the term business owner or manager kind of exclusive to people? Like, are we defining that? What if they consider themselves an entrepreneur, but they haven't incorporated?
Well,
I think that's semantic. I think that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they
I
don't
think that
have to be bona fide in some way as a business owner.
It'd be up to the governor, right? So the governor would pick somebody that he believes is either an owner or manager of these 3 things. Entrepreneur.
adequately represent.
Right. We can be more prescriptive to answer your question. If you want to be more detailed, we certainly can.
And do those terms have definition?
No.
Startup, middle stage, mature.
And we can't define it.
And that's a piece of what I'm, I think that those of us who've been working on this since that Pepsi conference. I think what that's part of what we're hoping for is that there are definitions around those. But that we fill those out and figure out what we actually offer for each stage. And there are 4, I think the 4 stages are identified, but so why don't you keep going?
Okay. Powers and duties of the task force in determining how to better enable business growth and development in Vermont. The task force shall do the following: aggregate resources available to businesses at each stage of development, including startup, early stage, middle stage, and mature companies. Determine which additional resources are necessary to better serve businesses for each stage of development. Identify how best to market and communicate resources found in those previous 2 determinations and the business community. Determine the state's role in accessing capital, including the investment environment in a New England region, the availability of tax credits to leverage private capital, and ensuring support of the current tech hub designation. Identify ways to offer investor education to high net worth individuals interested in investing in Vermont businesses, and then address any other related issues as determined by the task force.
Right.
Does it make sense for this committee to hear the presentation from the New England investment group that presented at Betsy? We heard that,
Yeah.
like, we heard what the investment environment in New England is and the whole country.
Yeah. It would. I think that this is an issue that every state wrestles with and deals with differently. Every state, there are states that have set up actual capital funds.
Right, I'm just saying we paid for them.
That's true. Let's ask Jessica if we could,
Okay.
if they could distill it to an hour, that'd be
Right.
great.
But I think they were less than an hour.
They were very good. Yeah. Okay. And then this report would come and hopefully be something for us to act on next year, which would be great.
I would say, I think the tax department is the only group that knows the availability of tax credits. I don't know who else in this list would be comprehensively knowledgeable about that.
The treasurer's office and the tax department. And we,
Oh, they're in there?
No, the task force can bring anybody they want.
Oh,
That's, I mean, they don't have to be on the committee. Our stakeholders hopefully would be, called, as needed. So,
Right.
I mean, all the stakeholders don't have to serve
Right.
on the committee.
I mean, they do hear about tax credits and fine.
Yeah, and we all have, I will remind everybody, we have the, tax expenditure bill, is published at the beginning of each biennium, and it's online on the JFO website.
One clarification, the assistants, I have ACCD, I don't have ledge council. We typically support legislator only committees.
Right.
Haven't had that discussion, but I don't see really,
I had put it in that it would be joint fiscal and lunch council.
right, and again, that's, my office has pretty much said that we help legislator committees at this point, if it's made up of legislators only, that ledge council.
That was not my understanding. My understanding is we only have legislators serving on it.
Yeah. I can add it, I will talk to my
Great. Let's do that. And then,
chief counsel about that.
right. Okay. Let's keep going.
Report you mentioned, Madam Chair, November 15th of this year, there'll be a report due. Along with any legislative action that they recommend to be taken. The meetings begin August 1. And the task force ceases December 1st of this year.
Yeah.
So it's up to 8 meetings is the amount of per diems. They can meet more than 8 times, but the per diems are capped at 8. It's a pretty, August 1 to December 1. I was going to ask you if that's the time you wanted. That's pretty limited. It's just 4 months, 5 months.
They can get started. If they need more time, they can, just like the convention center, they can go back to us and ask.
I might then suggest we push back the task subdivision 4 on page 8. The task force shall cease to exist on December 1.
Okay,
Maybe push that back.
You know what? We don't even need to
next
say
year.
that. No one needs to say when it will end.
You generally want to have, for appropriations reasons, you want to have an end date to a task force.
So then why don't we make it, what are you suggesting?
July.
Yeah, that's not bad. So
Okay.
sometime next 2027.
Okay.
July
Right.
1. How about June 30th? 2027.
Right.
Okay.
That's calendar responsible. Right.
This right now is planned at the end of the year. The report is due on the 15th of November.
It could be a report or and they can also ask for it to be an update and that their work is so substantial they'd like to consider. We can also ask, say, a report or interim report, given the scale of this.
You want to write an interim? So give them that.
What does the committee feel? Happy. I mean, I think this is a big piece of work.
It's a lot of work. And it's important.
Okay, then let's ask for an interim report for the, I mean,
I think you need to cut out the number of things you're asking them to do. That's the only way I could even.
And
See,
and I think,
I don't wanna
I
send
think
it
it's
to the
important.
field.
I think it needs to be done. I think it needs to be done timely. So
Right.
we should have something, but they've worked on it for what? 5 months?
4 months.
I mean, why don't we take out the things that are available to us without,
Because one of the key things that has to be done, we need to do a better job, and that would be working with, whether it's Heather Pelham or whoever's gonna market this. One of the needs is for the state or whoever to own marketing what we have available to all stages of business development. We do a lousy job, as we discovered in the Pepsi conference. We do a lousy job of letting everybody know what's available to them at what stage of development.
is that the goal of this task force? Is to give tourism and marketing?
No, it's one piece is to actually inventory the resources that are available for businesses in all stages of development. What resources are there in the state?
I feel like that's Lyle's job.
Well, hasn't been done.
I mean,
No.
I think he needs time to do that.
We could charge, that is one avenue for us to discuss, which is charging ACCD with that job and economic. We could certainly do that. But that needs to be done. And then we need to figure out how we're going to market and develop it. And that also could be the Department of Economic Development. That is, we could also charge that, that's a good way of looking at it. These are issues that we need to discuss and figure out how we're going to do a better job. And that may be the best way to do it.
I
is to-
think we're just
charge
setting
it.
this large group of people up to fail by telling them you have to do 5 different things with subcategories of things certain groups have asked for or have access to that are not in this group. Tourism isn't on here. So if you want economic development and tourism to work together
Right.
to articulate what business incentives are available, that sounds great. That feels really different than all of this.
That is part of what is hoped for. So, this is really just to get the conversation going. I think we are all open to best ways of accomplishing what we want. I think we all want the same thing, which is we want to better articulate the resources available to us, figure out how we market those, and then in addition, address what are the resources we don't offer, where could we do a better job, how could we do a better job statewide, and how we can really provide a clearer access to capital.
So this does not need to be a perfect product. We're
No.
gonna pass it out, we're gonna bring it back.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on it.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of time to finesse this.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just
that's
saying,
great.
if we don't finesse it, it makes it very easy for appropriations to strip out.
I agree with you. That, yes, pass.
But they won't see it stripped out until we're done with the second.
That's what I'm saying. If we, like, I don't know that I'm hoping, I could rewrite this outside of committee to just be very narrow. I don't know how much committee time we're spending on a task force.
It's relevant for the effort. I believe it's completely relevant to the mission of the committee.
I think we'd be better, if you think it's really relevant, I think we'd be better served hearing what we already have. Because then we could actually make policy that helps us with
Well,
that.
that's the objection. The objective is to actually understand and do an inventory of what we actually have.
It's gonna be a lot of appendices to things that maybe we should all have knowledge of. Right, like we just heard a report that was paid for by the state on the investment landscape in New England.
Which we heard at the Pepsi.
We could all hear that in 45 minutes. And that often helps other people hear it too.
Inevitably.
I think that would be a better use of 45 minutes than saying, go find that and put it in an appendix.
Well, I think that from this robust conversation, I think clearly we want to articulate what we want and what we need and who should do it. And I think that is the conversation we need to have. And, so I am open, and I think that's the job of this committee, is we really want to better serve economic development in this state. And I think to do that, in part, what has become very clear to me is that we're not clear, all businesses are not clear on who to go to where. 39% of new businesses don't know where to go and have not asked for any of the resources available to them. In the study that was done, and I can't remember who did that study, but that number just stuck out in my brain, that we have a bunch of people who don't know where to go or how to access help. And we have that help and we don't have it everywhere. So what do we have? What can we add? Who can do it? How do they access it? And how can we serve Vermont businesses better?
I just say, let's take number 3 then and make that the whole charge for a year. It's gonna take them a year just to figure out how to market and communicate resources to Vermont.
So actually, I think there are a bunch of ideas, and during our break, I'd love to actually put them together and we can chat with Rick about how to redraft this. But rather than doing it just like that, I would rather have a fuller. I'd rather just look at it quickly before we do that and then make a suggestion for Rick to Rick, because I think that's a good idea, but let's just do that. So I think we were going to take a break in a few minutes. I think let's just finish this bill and take a break. David has to go. and, we'll reconvene after we, and we'll figure out what we're gonna read.
Okay, subsection G, the compensation and reimbursement standard per diem language.
Yeah.
Reimbursement for legislators and, non-legislators for up to 8 meetings. The statute does clarify, I think it's, 32 days, 1010, that if you're not otherwise compensated by your employer to attend the meeting, you get per diem, reimbursement.
Yeah,
The money comes from ACCD. So again, this is something where ACCD, not from the general fund, ACCD will need to find the money, and that can be a budget appropriations discussion. And Pat can maybe fill the blanks there, but we're not making appropriation here. ACCD would need to find the money in their budget or their appropriation just for the per diems.
that is, anyway, I think that needs to be reviewed. I don't, that's very unusual. That doesn't happen.
I may defer to Pat on that. Maybe the current way that appropriations wants those per diems to be.
I don't care. That is not an AC. I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think that. I mean, I think that's.
So how would you like that to be worded from the general fund?
It's done from our legislative fund generally. I mean, where is it done from, Pat? You're our expert.
So Scott Moore, who works on this,
Yeah,
does usually incorporate a little bit of wiggle room into the budget to account for
he always.
per diem costs. However, when there are, task force or study committee like this, typically it will end up, if it ends up in the budget, will show up as its own line item as an appropriation for it. I think in this instance, you're talking about enough people who are eligible for per diem for enough meetings that would probably need its own appropriation. That said, I can always check with Scott to see how much room there is in the legislative budget. But I will note that there are certainly some members on this board, task force, that are not legislators that are eligible for per diems. So that kind of a question.
Okay, let's ask Scott. Because we always build in legislative study committee into the budget. There's always wiggle room for it, and I have never to a point. To a dollar. Got it. Okay, let's finish up.
Okay, section 8 is bringing over the veggie repeal of the prospective repeal. I forget there's I think F225 also has this language, but bringing this over, this would basically remove the prospective sunset of veggie set for January 1, 2027. So veggie would be able to live on indefinitely upon repealing this section. Again, currently set to repeal on January 1, 2027. Section 9, there was you may remember, the task force to study the development of a convention center and performance venue that was in your economic development bill last year. That did pass and was created. There was a request to allow that group to meet additional times. So the law last year limited to 6 times.
Right.
This would up it to 14.
And they're meeting currently once a month. Thomas serves on this committee. We have the update and review from them, and they asked that they continue, and they continue through the end of this year.
Makes sense to me. I think they're doing good work.
And that was the impression we got.
So
It's just
I
simply,
did like their report. And I will say, Senator Chittenden and I are going to a meeting tonight of Experience Shelburne. I think what's really valuable about that is, as a resident of Shelburne, the community partners, the select board, the town manager, and others have never been more aligned to try and make something like a performance venue happen. And that's generally what it takes, is a community having the alignment to say, we all want this and we'll work to make it happen.
yeah, absolutely.
Like a key ingredient.
And I think, as the task force reported, they want to pursue those two things in very different paths. They want to separate out the performance venue and the convention center in the end separately.
I will say,
I keep broadening.
I think there is a policy committee of jurisdiction that needs to look at the governor's $22 million request for
Oh, yes,
UVM's event center. And
I thought it was a stadium.
Terrence,
multi-purpose center.
we already have a steel board. I agree.
And I don't know if that's education. I brought it up to Seth and I'm
That's a-
telling you.
Yeah, we need
Somebody needs to say this is a good use of the higher ed trust fund or not.
not.
Well, it's because of an influx in the estate, so there is a additional capital, but I agree, it's a conversation that should be aired out.
Is that
Yeah.
money better used for programs in higher ed that are helping people get jobs?
Right. Just,
I don't know who's gonna hear all of this before it gets to appropriation.
On the previous point, I agree, we absolutely should take that up, but on the previous point, the other thing I've been advocating on this task force for the convention center and event center. But I don't think it's about one event center. I think it's about how did the state adopt policy that allows for communities to have congregation points, which they've been doing since the ancient Roman times, and it's built community. So I want Rutland to have an event center. I want to make it easier for you to build an event center. It's just too hard to build anything in this state. I also want Shelburne to do one. So just looking at ways to state, if it's
Yeah.
easier to build the infrastructure, municipal planning, and otherwise for these things, not just about one. The convention center, I think, has to be in Burlington, to be honest with you. So that's a very Burlington specific conversation. We can have that discussion. But as for event centers, that's where the focus has been for me.
and I think actually, if your committee, if your task force takes on this idea of a statewide, like 4 or 5 key point, you wouldn't end up with a fish concert on a farm that was inappropriate with no transportation access and mud. So,
What about the original Woodstock?
yeah, right, well, and that was a disaster, not much has happened there since, so, I have actually thoughtfully planning out, even if it is on a farm, it has to be have enough facilities and transportation access and all the, and lodging facilities around it to make it possible, but I think that's a great idea to actually roll out that kind of recommendation. Would be,
I mean, yeah, needed performance venues all over.
we have
State,
performance venues, but
but-
not at the scale Thomas has been talking about. We do not have the odd stat, how many people thought,
Memorial Auditorium is now given up, but I don't think Burlington has
but
any.
how many did it see?
5,000, 6,000.
Yeah, really?
No, it's smaller.
I
So maybe 15.
didn't know we had
I
any.
went to some great concerts at Memorial, but I can't imagine 5,000 people going.
Before your time.
I think I went to one of the last
He
concerts.
remembers going to the odd, don't you?
Of course, yeah.
You remember 5,000?
Good.
I think 5,000 maybe a bit.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But even if we had one that was able to take 2,500, that would be thrilling.
I think Flynn, what, 50?
No, because Flynn is like,
When we do 5,000, it's UVM or the waterfront.
because the stadium, you need to talk about the stadium. At UVM,
UVM, the gym.
the gym.
2,600. Sure.
How many?
2,600.
Was it the odd?
The Memorial Auditorium.
Yeah, Memorial
I've never heard the odd before, but yes.
Sorry, in Buffalo, we call it
If
the
you
odd.
believe the
So
Google search.
Joe, you'll hear Joe and me talk about it as the odd. Okay, the Memorial Auditorium, 2,600. Great.
So, but I am curious, what level of performance venue are we at?
That's they're discussing and coming back.
Because Shelburne Museum does outdoor concerts of thousands.
Sure, and the web, that Shelburne Farm used to do all the outdoor concerts.
And if we want to go to a real concert, we go to Montreal.
Does it have to be that way?
And that's Thomas's point.
Yeah.
Let's reclaim that.
I think the only place that could accommodate what you're thinking of then would be a performance venue at UVM. I mean, that is that we looked at Memorial and everything in Burlington to say, and if South Burlington builds pedestrian safe, crossing of 89, we basically talked about it would be on one side or the other of 89.
So that is what we're looking for from the task force, is exactly that kind of creative thinking on how we accommodate that need. Patrick, go
Are
for it.
we,
Randy, and then
you
Patrick.
hear back from task force, what's the date?
I'm not sure we identified that. We certainly extended their ability to meet, but we would hear back from them, I assume, in January of 27.
Maybe we could have them in as we talk about the event center and or somebody.
Good idea.
Like that's the only related conversation.
Let's marry those two.
They are to report, November 1, 2026 is the final report. So the interim was November 1st of last year. Final report, November 1, 2026. For the.
So sorry, what is November 1?
For the Convention Center Task Force.
So we
That's
already
the
have that
final-
in statute.
No, yes,
Yeah, so November 1, 26.
that's the final report.
Great. Okay, perfect. That, oh, sorry.
I just want to flag that this is another task force that having with additional meetings, there's going to be per diem eligibility. So again, as you're thinking about per diems for task forces and dollars keep adding up.
There's one legislator, two legislators on this.
Are there any other, sorry, I don't remember the exact composition. If there are any other
Yes,
per diem,
That's tough.
just saying.
I can-
Actually,
we are
I
probably
can
talking
pull
about
up here.
appropriation.
My favor to you is to also ask Scott what money has actually been expended on this task force.
Sure.
Because my guess is, right,
For us, I didn't put in for per diem, so
see,
it's half as much as we expected.
Well, so not, there is the phenomenon where everyone eligible for purchase does not always think of how you need to.
You need.
I know
that
that that's what actually was spent on this.
But
And
then-
you still, no matter what, need to appropriate the amount that would be.
Absolutely going forward, but I also would like to know what was actually spent this year. And who was the House member?
Abby Duke.
Abby, right?
So this is Act 65. This is what the task force was created in. This is what actually was enacted. Member of the House, member of the Senate, Commissioner of Department of Economic Development, the President of the Vermont Chamber, the CEO of the Lake Champlain Chamber, the President of the Vermont Regional RDCs, the Chair of the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agency or designate. So those 7 people. And I will also note the language is the same for the appropriation. It is monies for legislators, monies appropriate to the General Assembly, for other members that are not legislators, ACTV. So I can mirror that language a little bit if you want to have it that way, but this is what appropriations wanted at the very end. Structure.
Okay, we could think about it.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Restricted language essentially the same as here.
The administrative.
But yeah, who's gonna do the work? Who's gonna put the reports together? Who's going to do the administration?
Administration of the report or of
The report of the project.
Of the convention center, it
the
is,
task force itself through ACCD, but
it's to races.
I mean, whoever wrote whatever report we got did a great job. They
Yeah.
deserve to be paid the millions of dollars we give to other people that
No,
don't
they-
do a great job on
They
reports.
did a great job. That was we talked a lot about who was gonna own that one
Yeah.
and they, given that there was a proposal from the business community to have this, to finally pull all those strings together that have been fairly disparate about these two pieces, the convention center and the Performing Arts Center, it made sense that ACCD oversaw it. In this case, I think, and it may make sense. So I would suggest we take a break now. I'd love to, when you come back, we're gonna start again. David is gonna disappear for the Agency of Education gathering at their offices up at National Life, and we will miss you, but we will reconvene at 10:50.